I am super excited to welcome our next guest, David Karandish. David is a fascinating guy. He's been involved in technology for 25 years, started as a very young guy, and got the entrepreneurial bug very early on. He's had a lot of success. You'll hear all about him. He's got a great way that he looks at talent, the universe, the importance of prioritizing work inside of organizations and everything in between. He's a fascinating guy. I am excited to bring him to you tonight. So let's not pause anymore. Let's dive in. Hey, David, thanks for coming on tonight. How are you?
I'm doing well, Vic. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy.
I'm glad to be here.
Great. Hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing right now?
Yeah, so serial entrepreneur, been in the tech space for a little over 20 years. Most recently, I've been a part of a company called Capacity, which I had the pleasure to help co-found back in 2017. Capacity is a support automation platform that uses AI to go get rid of all of those emails, tickets, and phone calls that people don't like to deal with. We're based
fantastic.
here in St. Louis. We've got about 2,000 clients and having a good time.
That's awesome. So listen, rather than give away all the stories, I know you're going to tell them you've got some good ones. You've had some great success in your life. And from the conversations we've had in the past, I have the privilege of knowing some of them right now. And I'd like you to bring the audience through the journey of David. Why don't you take us back? Like, where did all this start? Where'd your appetite for creativity and creating things, where'd that come from?
Yeah, so I've loved to build things ever since I was a kid. I was always doing science experiments and Lego projects, and anytime there was an opportunity to build something, I was there. I can remember setting up an elaborate recreation of the Back to the Future movies in my basement. I had a little toy DeLorean, and then one year I even got a train set, and I got the train to do the Back to the Future 3 scene where it pushes it into time. So yeah, I always loved to build things. I started learning to code in high school. I graduated high school in 2001. Right about that time, learning to build web pages for people. If you could do that, you were somewhere between a wizard and a warlock in terms of your magical powers. And then again, if you go back in time to that time, pre-Facebook, pre-Instagram, pre-Snapchat. The big way that my generation communicated was in AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah.
And so my first big project was building a text-to-speech bot for the AOL Instant Messenger in high school.
Nice.
And so I've been doing this bot stuff for a very long time. We started selling it around a high school campus. I eventually started doing it dorm to dorm at Washington University in St. Louis. And then ended up taking an internship at a company called Monster Commerce.
Nice.
They were an early SaaS play that would aggregate products up and then go sell them out. So if you wanted to sell your Topo Chico bottles online, they would give you the shopping cart software for that. And so I got my kind of first taste of the SaaS world before it was even called software as a service. And then along the way, I had a buddy of mine come to me and he's like, David, I want your help. I was like, sure. How can I help? He's like, I want to start a magazine for celebrity fashions. I'm like, well, I don't know anything about magazines. I know even less about celebrities, and I know even less about fashion. So let's do it.
Perfect.
Sounds like a great idea. Right.
Yeah.
So we ended up building a little e-com website where we were selling the top fashions that celebrities were wearing. At one point, we became one of the largest resellers of Von Dutch hats online.
Nice.
If you remember those mesh trucker hats that were popular
Absolutely.
for about 15 minutes. But it was at that time when I really got into the world of SEO, learning to market online. And then this little magical thing came out. So Google released their AdSense product. And that was it was the first time you could put contextual ads, not just banner ads, but contextual text ads on your site. And we were actually making more money from our product reviews on the products we weren't selling than selling the hats.
Amazing.
So that was kind of an aha moment. And then my buddy and I helped our Monster Commerce friends build out a little online marketplace for selling their clients' products. I had a brief detour where we tried to build out a little early metaverse type concept. We were way too early, and it was that one didn't go very far. And then my buddy's cousin was running a mortgage company, and he was like, "Hey, this is call it 2003. He's like, if you guys could generate leads for us, we'll pay you for that." And we were like, "That sounds great." So we went in and built a little mortgage lead gen company. So reason I'm telling these stories is that what I'm doing now is the culmination of everything I've done in my career, from SEO to content monetization to SaaS to lead generation. It was all kind of leading up to where we're at here. So we did that for a little while. I graduate, went on a little reality TV detour. We come back to that later. And then end up starting a comparison shopping engine, company called Announce Media. Announce Media had a portfolio of websites to help you comparison shop anything you want to buy online, products and services. We were a big Yahoo partner back in the day.
Yep.
And then we ended up leveraging that to go buy a company called answers.com. We took that private, and then eventually kind of went in two directions. Had part of it syndicating Q&A out, part of it doing a SaaS consumer experience roll-up. And then that all was the fertile ground for leading me to go start Capacity.
That's unreal. I want to bring you back to AOL Messenger for a second. You know how it's funny, like you start cutting your teeth in something there, you saw an opportunity. But I remember a funny story. I had nothing to do with it. I was a consumer of it. What was some of the funny things that people used to do with AOL Instant Messenger? They change their away message to something cheeky.
Yeah.
Do you know the guy who wrote the book Shit My Dad Says?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you know the story, but the reason he wrote the book Shit My Dad Says was because of AOL Instant Messenger. So he decided that what he would do, because he had a father who was hilarious, it would, let's say, like outlandish things. Oh, you're a moron. Right. You're never going to be successful. Everything his dad said to him would be the new away message on AOL Instant Messenger. And the guy had like one-liners for days and days. And so after a while of him just saying, oh, my father said something crazy to me again today, and he'd put that little piece on, right? And he'd be like, you got to write a book. And so that's where the book Shit My Dad Says comes from.
Wow. That's amazing.
It is amazing, isn't it?
That guy has been memorialized forever with all of his witticisms.
100%. 100%. So, hey, let me ask a couple of questions here. I'm going to start with one. You knew you liked building stuff, and you just gave me, a good 5 to 6 minutes on sort of the quick steps of going from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. What I take from that is, I know you've had a lot of success along the way. I can't imagine every stroke of the keyboard you made and every pass you put in the air was a touchdown, right? Or every stroke was right on. Like, you had to fight through a lot of change, a lot of adversity. Tell us about the good, bad, and the indifferent times. Like, what did you go through on this journey? Like, how, you talk about big milestones. This was a win, but I know that buried in all that, you had to keep your chin up. Like, what happened along the way?
Yeah, I think the thing about, you've seen those memes where it's like, oh, this is what success looks like. People think success looks like, and here's what it actually looks like, all the ups and downs. It's so true. I can remember when we were first getting started, we had signed a big client to do our webpage design. And we're like, great, this is awesome. We built this great website. We got paid for it.
Which company was this, by the way? Which company?
This was called Encore Designs. It was a company we started in high school. But our client was called Out of the Box Solutions, the consulting firm. And we delivered this great website. And then we're like, what do we do now? We got to go fight to go get the next one and the next one. And so for me, I realized that I wanted a business model that could help scale and bring in revenue where it wasn't entirely dependent on every single conversation that I had going out and doing that. So that was the precursor before we got into the world of search engine optimization, which was new and exciting at the time. And I can remember every 30 days or so, there'd be a big Google algorithm update. Sometimes we would make out like bandits coming back from the casino. And then other times we would make out like we had nothing in our pockets coming out of the casino. So
Yeah.
it was very, there are a lot of ups and downs for that stuff. My dad was born in Iran, and he would call me during college at this time, and he would say, has Google done their dance again this month? And he'd want to know if we were up or down. But I can even remember. I remember another story of when we were first starting out Announce Media. We were bringing in a private equity firm to go and invest with us. And as they were doing their diligence, they had looked at one of our competitors, and they were very impressed with our competitors' categorization technology. And we didn't have anything for that at that point. So we had 48 hours to figure out a way to categorize a couple million keywords and to show them that we have this great tech supporting our whole engine. And so we didn't have the manpower to do that. But we were like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so we ended up scraping the site results that would show up for the keywords that we wanted to advertise on. And then we'd categorize the sites, which was, I don't know, 10,000 sites to categorize instead of a couple million.
Yeah.
And so if your Best Buy showed up, we knew it was probably an electronics keyword. And if Home Depot showed up, it was probably a home and garden keyword. And that little hack, like, I don't know that it made the investment, but the fact that we were able to turn that around so quickly just shows that sometimes you just have to reframe the problem, and you don't have to try to solve the exact problem somebody gives you, but you want to reframe it in a way where you can solve a very closely related problem that gets you 90% of the way there.
Yeah, sure.
So we had examples like that. I mean, other examples, I was at one point 4 days away from acquiring About.com off the New York Times, but our financing was taking a little longer than we'd like. And the guys over at IAC swooped in, put an all cash offer in, and bought the thing out in our 4-day exclusivity window of being out. And so I've seen the highest of highs, buying a public company at age 26 to the lowest of lows, along the way.
Amazing. How did you get financially savvy?
I read a lot of books. I'm an avid reader, and not everybody loves a college environment or a classroom environment. And I did well at school. I did well at school, but I love to read. I'm surrounded by books right now. I've got Steve Jobs' biography here, which I've read. Just got this new one I haven't read yet, but Sociopath, the memoir. It's on my reading list. Hopefully there aren't too many similarities there. But I love to read, and that's definitely part of it. But also, I love to ask questions. Like, I don't let things go if I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Which can be annoying sometimes, but it's generally worked out for the best.
Yeah, no, that's always the best approach, and I think this podcast is about leaving breadcrumb trails for people listening and coming up, or maybe who haven't figured certain things out and lead a little additional insights. Early on in my career, and this was something I learned, the light bulb came on quick, but early on I thought that asking questions was a sign of weakness. And
a lot of people
do. It was because I watched behavior around me. But then I would see people walk out of meetings and say, do you know what the hell he was talking about? I would say, I don't know, but I have to go look it up. And I realized that meetings weren't presentations. They were collaboration sessions. Meetings were about understanding, coming to a resolution, or working on a problem or something like that. Sure, there are some meetings that are updates. Hey, we're 5 out of scale, 1 to 10. We're here, we're moving that. But mostly, when you're trying to solve business problems, meetings. And so I immediately became the guy who would say, I don't really get that. Can you explain that to me again? And then all of a sudden that opened up my creative valve, and I was able to participate where I would not have been able to participate if I stayed silent and dumb.
And for every one time you said that, there were 4 people in the room who probably had the exact same question.
100%.
So happy you asked it.
You free people up.
The other thing that I've done over my career, Vic, that I don't know, maybe a lot of people do this. I don't know, but I, I don't collect a lot of things. Like I don't have I'm actually more of a minimalist from a stuff perspective.
Yeah.
But the one thing I collect is I collect these organizing frameworks that simplify the way to think about things. And I've done that for years and years and years. And I found that the power of making something really simple
Oh, yeah.
has been so helpful in just navigating the business world over the last 20, 25 years. So,
Hey, how about we unpack that for a second? Give me an example, and then I want the second example because you've collected them.
yeah,
Give me
I'll
an
give you a good
idea of an
example.
organizing framework, and let's let people know what you think an organizing framework looks like.
Yeah, so I kind of view an organizing framework as it has two parts. One, it has to be a simplifying way of viewing the world, and then two, it needs to be practical. So it needs to be something you can go apply. So because I have a lot of cool ways of simplifying the world, and I'm like, yeah, that's interesting, but I don't really know what to go do with that. But it has to be applicable in my kind of nomenclature. So I'll give you one. Uh, I, I think of the world in terms of problems that we face in terms of two buckets. You've got bicycle problems and network problems. So bicycle problems are if you get on the bike, if you pedal the bike, stay on the bike, you're going to move the bike forward. The bike is going to move forward down the race. Now, somebody might pedal it faster. Yeah, if you don't have the right seat, your bottom might hurt at the end of the race. You may need to fidget with the gears to have the right ratios. But if you pedal the bike's going to move forward. Right? A lot of the academic world is like that. You do the work, you put in the time, the bike's going to move forward. Then there's a whole class of problems that I call like network problems. And this isn't direct, your success is not directly tied to how much you pedal the bike. It's tied to who you know. So, like, do you know the people who are able to get you to this person to this person? You think about like the world of Hollywood as an extreme example, right? There are a lot of
Absolutely.
hardworking people there doing dishes and serving tables. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but people who are aspiring to be on television and film who are like they don't know the right people to help accelerate that. And so one of the things I've run into is where I've had uh, people on my team who are like, hey, we just need to pedal harder. And I'm like, yeah, there's some pedaling that needs to be done, but this is a network problem. This is a network issue we need to go solve, not uh, just go work harder and try to get the same results.
Well, that's interesting. And I bet when you were at spots where you wanted to buy, acquire, and do things, you had a couple of choices there. You could pedal harder in the current state you're in and raise, earn the money the old fashioned way and take 10, 15, 20 years to get there. Or you could go find a partner to help you finance the dream.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. We were
Exactly.
working on an SMS integration with our platform, and we had two
Okay.
guys working on it for 2 months, and we were chugging away. And then we found a company that was sending 5 million SMS messages a month. We were able to get the right financing to go make that happen. And
Yep.
then 14 months later, we're sending almost 20 million SMS messages a month. Like we would have been sending not even 100,000,
Yeah.
thousands at that time on the rate we were on. Another organizing framework that's really helped me, and I think would be helpful especially for entrepreneurs coming up and young managers, is I think there are kind of three distinct roles in the problem world. You've got problem defining, like, hey, what is the problem? What are the parameters of the problem? What does success look like? And some people are really good at that, and some people are not. Then you got problem solving. I think we all know what problem solving is, but to take the problem definition, we're going to go find a creative way to go knock it out.
Yep.
But the third one is the one that I don't think it's talked about enough. It's very understudied, and that's problem selecting. Like, is this problem actually worth solving?
Worth
Yes,
solving.
you've defined
Yeah.
it. Maybe you have a potential solution, but is this actually worth us going and spending the time on? And what I found is that I've worked in the past with some great problem solvers. Like you give them the problem, hey, you need to go solve this, they'll go knock it out of the park. But if you said, hey, here are 10 problems, which one should we be solving?
Yeah.
They're like, not quite sure what to do with that. And so figuring out how to replicate the problem selecting within your organization. So you make
Yeah.
sure, yes, we have great problem solvers, but we have replicated the ability to select the right problems to solve. I think is one of those like critical meta skills that doesn't get talked about a lot.
Having worked in big organizations, prioritization was a discipline that you had to have, and you got educated on it quickly. And to a certain extent, you're talking about that. But there's another aspect of this, and I'm interested on your take, given that you've been in software business, since you're, 18, 19 years old. I see people having the argument of solutions versus software, meaning they get hung up in systems, or solutions versus systems. Okay. They get hung up in, hey, I have this tool and this is what my tool does, or I really like this tool, or I believe in this tool. And they're trying to constantly wrench it and turn it and twist it to jam the problem into the solution that's there, versus coming back from it saying, what do I really want to accomplish? I often find myself on calls with clients who say, yep, my system does this, my system does that, then I have another system that does this, and I write it all down and I listen, and then they're expecting me to play it back. And what I say in the playback is, hey, that's not what I heard. Let me tell you what I heard. I heard you want to increase revenue. I heard you want to drive down cost. I hear you want to have a catch buzzword of the day. You want to have a delightful customer experience. Like, these are the things you want to do. Like, can we agree on those things? Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's start with revenue. What is the number one most impactful thing we could do to drive revenue? And those answers are sell more widgets, create more appointments, do more stuff, right? And then we start unpacking those things. And then, of course, when you peel it back like that and then you stack them up, not every bit of juice is worth the squeeze. So it's a fascinating thing. In your professional experience, aside from what you're building and supplying to customers, is that something you experience in bringing solutions to life inside of organizations, them trying to figure out how to best use it?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. So we started an AI assessment about 6, 7 months ago, maybe 8 months ago now, and we're not a consulting firm. That's not what we do. We wouldn't claim to do that. But what we found is so many people are coming to us saying, David, I know I need to go implement AI, automation, generative AI, this sort of thing, but I don't know where to get started. And my team, like everybody's like describing their part of the elephant. Right? And they don't know how to get their hands around it. They don't know how to prioritize it. And so we go through this very simple process of surveying your team, asking what all the problems are. We play it back and we say, this is what we heard. Did we miss anything? 9 times out of 10, it goes really well. 1 time out of 10, it gets a little spicy.
Okay.
And we gotta break up a few fights. People calling each other's babies ugly.
Yeah.
And then we go take that and we map it back to these core areas of AI and automation that we've identified across our clients. And we're like, hey, out of all the things you could do, here is a shortened list of what we think you should do. Let's come out of session number 2 with the short list of here are the 3 things we're going to go focus on. And the amount of clarity of taking the chaos at the beginning to an organized, prioritized list of here are the 3 things that are going to be most impactful. And people come out of that and they're like, wow, this is amazing. But before we haven't done any kind of technology implementation, we've just said, let's stack rank what we need to go solve. That the value and having an objective third party who's seen some of these things before come in and say, here's how we would stack it up. It goes really well. And the whole nuance of the approach is that you don't come in with any presupposition. Like we do chatbots for people as one of the things we do. But we'll come into some folks and they're like, no, I don't need a chatbot. I need a
Yeah.
back-end workflow, or I need a help desk, or I need, like, start with a blank slate. Tell us what your problems are, and then we'll map the solutions back, rather than
100%.
coming in with the solution and trying to shoehorn it in to your specific situation.
Super, super common. Super common. People are shoehorning things in. And, I was probably guilty of it during a large part of my career. You're in a business, you're working on the business, right? You're in it, right? You're not really working on it, but you're in it. You're working in the
Yeah,
business. And if you're in a real large organization where a vendor management process could take 7 or 8 months, you don't have enough time to go outside for the problem. You got to look at the tools in the tool bag.
right.
Who do we have an enterprise deal with, and what solutions do they bring? And by the way, if they even come close, that's the tool we're going to use. It could be 3 times more expensive. It could be 20% effective as a tool on the street, but some of those places have prohibitive processes. Hey, I want to switch gears a second here.
Sure.
And I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't even expect we'd talk about this tonight. But now that we've come down this framework thing, I want to talk to you about build versus buy. Now, for the audience here, you may think that David is going to be a complete buy bias because he builds stuff that people buy. What I've gotten to know about you, David, is I think now we've known each other just a little over a year. You have sort of the most unbiased presentation style. You're very passionate about your own platform and what you do and what capacity does, but you have an incredible ability to disconnect yourself and attach yourself to the customer's problem and solution. Typically, we're talking a lot about things you can solve for, so it becomes easy. But I just want to let the audience know, like, when we get into this topic, I really feel like you're going to give free advice here. I run into scenarios all the time where technology organizations have a propensity to want to build everything. It's been going on for my 25 years in technology. Depending on the size, the budgets, et cetera, tech people want to turn knobs. They want to turn knobs, they want to build. As I started maturing as a CIO and having a seat at the table, I realized very quickly that solution providers were not vendors, they were my partners. And so if I wanted to build something and you built it already, I'd say, yeah, we're going to attach capacity to our enterprise. We built it. For all intents and purposes, like, yeah, they built it already, but they're much the same reason why you bought an SMS company, right? I go find a partner to do that. I would like you to give the audience a perspective on what it really takes to build enterprise class solutions in today's world.
Yeah, when I think about building for the enterprise, it's very different than building for SMB. Now, I want to just call that out, first of all. There's a layer of complexity around things like, how do you integrate with your SSO provider, or what does your data retention policy look like? How do you have your backups and all the things that you need to get past your SOC 2 audits and your
Clients.
security? There's all
Yep.
that stuff. But I think at a fundamental level, I think about the history of commerce, and we wouldn't be sitting here having this nice chat today if everybody made everything.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't sew this shirt. I didn't manufacture this MacBook.
Yeah.
Because
We
if
didn't build
I
this
was
platform.
right, we didn't build this
Yeah.
platform. And so, I think most reasonable humans would agree that, like, we're in a better society if people can focus on their specialties for what to build, and then use commerce, use this invention, which in the history of mammals is relatively new, called fungible currency,
Mm-hmm.
to go buy and sell. And so I think one of the questions I would ask when someone's thinking about should you build or buy, like, is this core to your value prop? Does this include is there proprietary IP that you're trying to wrap up in this? Or is this something that is not super proprietary?
I'm
Uh,
smiling.
I I had one client we talked with, a prospect at the time, client now, where I said, look, if you guys want to build this, I'll tell you how we did it. Like, this is not some crazy big secret or we got man behind the curtain. Here's how we spent X many millions of dollars over Y years with this many developers to go build this out. But oh, by the way, even if you spent all of that today, by the time you catch up to where we're at today, where we will be at that
Yeah.
point, you're never going to catch up, right?
Never.
And so I'm not I'm not somebody who's like, you have to build everything from scratch at all times, or you have to buy everything from like, there is a place to build and there's a place to buy, but you have to ask yourself, what is the cost? What is the opportunity cost of the time it's going to take if we have to build it ourselves? And is it super proprietary? And if the answer is, yeah, this is a mission critical proprietary system where we've got some unique IP, unique approach that nobody else has tackled on it, great. Go assess what that build looks like. Um, if not, then it's like, how can I find the right vendor who's going to work with me in a flexible way, who understands my problem and the solution we need, not just all their tech buzzwords. And then I also think there's a third plane that doesn't get talked about a lot, which is configure. So the
Yeah.
reason why people are like, oh, I have to build it is because if I build it, it can be whatever I want, right? I can have the button here and I can have this color there. And so one other lens you can look at is you can say there are platforms that you can go buy, but if they're done well, they should be configurable. So you're configuring on the buy rather than having to just take what they give you and, good luck. It's like a cafeteria line.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't want the carrots, like, you're not getting a vegetable today. Like, I think there's a middle path where the best in breed platforms actually give you a good out of the box solution, but let you configure it to the point where you're getting 90% of the flexibility you get from a build at a small fraction of the cost.
I think, well, first and foremost, thank you for that. And I agree with everything you said. I often run into scenarios where people think that the stuff they do want to build is market differentiating. And it's not. I've been blessed to see many companies across single domains and across many domains. And sometimes a lack of perspective makes them think they're doing something unique, different, and proprietary to their environment. But it's really not. It's not. A lot of, especially in a regulated environment where transactions and the things you have to do to secure a transaction, whether it be credit card payment or mortgage loan or something like that. I mean, how many different ways you can originate a mortgage loan? I mean, you got to fill out a 1003, you got to collect the right data, you got to run credit, there are so many things you're mandated to do in a regulatory fashion. Now, yeah, there are things inside that you can do that differentiate yourself. I also think the build generation is going to die off.
Absolutely.
And I think if you're in your 40s now, you're the last of the builds. Maybe 40 might be the floor. Because everybody else behind that, and it might even be 35 the more I think about it, but everybody else, like if you're 38, 35, 40, whatever, and you're in technology, you've got 15, 20 years of building stuff under your belt when things weren't as available as they are today, nor were they moving as fast, nor were they as capable, nor were they as integratable or accessible, and they cost a ton of money. Well, now between, the technology that's available, the commercial offerings are out there, the ability to do it as a SaaS model and pay on a widget basis and flex and grow and all of these things, the consumers, the younger generation have been consuming things instantly. Now, you would think my generation would wise up to it. And certainly your generation would wise up to it, because if you liken it to an iPad, this was one of the early troubles I had when iPads came out. People said, what do you mean it's going to take you that much money to build something? I get my iPad, I open up, I go to the App Store, I download an app. Look, I can do all these things, and it was 99 cents. or it's
Right.
$2 or $3. Yeah, that's for you and it's on your desk and it's not enterprise and all the things you discussed up front. But I think the generation of build, I don't think it'll go away. I think it'll be something different. I think the build generation will be doing the things that you're talking about. I think they'll want to go build things that are really different and bring products to market. I am often surprised still with how much build goes on in the biggest companies. I've been very lucky to work with Fortune 10, Fortune 100, 500, and the more money they spend, they have armies of people building, 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 and building.
Well, and I've, another question I ask is if you're going to spend this amount of time, effort, and energy, is this a product that you want to go sell to the market? And then they're like, no, that sounds really hard.
Yeah.
I'm like, why would you spend that requisite investment on something that is not a revenue producing or something you can go multiply out its effect on?
Yeah.
And it's not proprietary. And they're like, yeah, that's a great point. Like, I don't have a great answer for you on that.
And the deploying capital against something that has to have a strong ROI and has to provide value prop back to the business that differentiates people. Because by deploying that capital, they're not deploying it elsewhere. There's an opportunity cost that they're taking on by that.
Well, and there's also the classic issue of sometimes you can do things in parallel and sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
9 women, despite all of our technology progress, cannot have a baby in a month. They just can't. It doesn't work that way. And it doesn't, I don't care if you could put 18 women. You could double it, right?
Unless you're some of my former CEOs or COOs who said, "How long is that going to take?" It's going to take a year. How much is the budget? 200,000. Okay, you have 800,000. It's going to come down by 75x or 75%. Not really. It's not really going to work like
that way. Right.
Because most of the operations folks and manufacturing folks, it's widgets, it's turn time, it's bodies, it's energy, and technology architecture is a lot different.
It would be like, hey, we're going to start putting the roof on before there's a foundation.
Pretty much. Yeah, there is a succession of things that need to happen for sure. Yeah, that's an interesting piece, the build versus buy. And lastly, what I said to somebody, and I'm interested in your take on what's going on in your companies. I said, here's the number one reason why I personally, if I could buy it, would buy it first versus build it. And all the reasons we just discussed will come in. But the punchline for me is no matter what I do, my cost of ownership of that solution, it's only going up. It's just in my experience, it's not going down. I've built plenty of stuff in my career. I really have. I built a lot of stuff. I inherited organizations that were building. We continued to build. And as much as we thought we'd get to a spot where it was done and we're in maintenance mode, we never, ever were done. And the investments in software just keep going through the roof. On the other hand, a provider who's starting to gain economy of scale through having 1, 2, 5, 10, 50, 100, 2,000 customers, start seeing an economy of scale across deployments and then could potentially bring it to the market at a more competitive price.
I mean, nothing is more true of that than these generative AI models where the data is the part of the competitive advantage. And so you think you're going to try to go build a better model on your own with a lack of data, like you're not going to be able to do that. And at the same time, I think it goes back to the problem selecting we were talking about earlier. Like, of all the problems you as an organization could select, is this a problem that you have to select to solve internally? You went out to the market, you put it in a public company, you put it in your 10Q. Hey, we are solving this problem internally. Is that something that's going to move the market in your favor? And if the answer is no, then take a hard look at that.
There's a slight curve to all of this in that, we know that Salesforce is really, they're formidable. And they've got, low-code platform. There are a lot of things to a lot of people, massive user adoption. So the thing we hear now is that, this week alone from, 2 or 3 of our customers, hey, we can do that in Salesforce. We can build that in Salesforce. Salesforce is fantastic, but that's not without a price tag and not without the maintenance and not without all of the things we discussed. Do you come across that? And, what's your take on that space, whether it be Salesforce or some other tool set like it?
So I heard a talk somebody gave once where they were talking about the fall of great civilizations. And, people were going in, they're like, oh, did these civilizations fall because they got conquered, because of this or that? The guy's theory was, no, actually, the collapse of most complex societies, what happens is that the complexity of the society gets to the point where there's so much bureaucracy, there's so much red tape, there's so many issues in order to act, that when a manageable crisis comes near, that manageable crisis becomes unmanageable because the amount of complexity to overcome becomes greater than the ability to manage it. And so I think platforms like Salesforce that have infinite number of configurations that they can go do. Unfortunately, Salesforce has become a very complex piece of software.
Yeah.
And it's starting to show a little bit of that complexity, its complexity age of you wouldn't build a lot of the things that Salesforce has now if you were building it in 2024.
Sure.
And so it's not that Salesforce is a bad platform. We use Salesforce. I like Salesforce in some cases. But if you don't recognize the complexity and the second order effects of if you build something on Salesforce and you don't need a completely customizable object, you're basically starting with a database, is how I would think about it.
Yeah.
There are solutions out there that will package up a lot of what you need where you don't have to go through that same kind of headache and heartache.
Makes sense. Hey, I want to switch gears again.
Yeah.
You've built a lot of companies. You've done some things with your high school buddies, and you've gone on and bought companies and all that. The topic now, right at 41 minutes, is talent. Talent to me is the first, the only ingredient that, if missed, will guarantee your failure.
100%.
So talk to me about the people you've come across along the way. Talk to me about, how you've acquired talent, because I'm going to go out on a limb here. This is impressive that I've been by you. And as great as it is to talk to you and watch you in action, I'm betting you didn't write every lick of code in the capacity platform.
Definitely not.
Right. So, but it's solid, and the rest of the solutions are solid. So talk to me about this. Tell me about how you acquire talent, how you assess it. What's your process there?
Great question. So the first thing is I recognized pretty early on that you can have a really good person who's just a bad fit. And I'll speak about myself. So that summer of my freshman year in college, I went and did an internship at MasterCard. MasterCard, I don't know if it's still the case, but at that time, every time you swipe a MasterCard, it would run through O'Fallon, Missouri, as the technical data center. True story. So I'm working at this place. It was voted one of the best places to work. It's a fantastic organization, wonderful people there, and I freaking hated it. Why? Because at MasterCard's stage, for me to be able to go in and affect change in a large, regulated, low on the totem pole, low on the totem pole kind of thing, it was just a bad fit. It's not that they were bad people or bad structures or bad processes, but I didn't have the patience to go climb a corporate ladder for 10 or 15 years in order to be able to go in and shake things up. Conversely, there are people who were there at MasterCard for 30 years.
Yeah. And
if you pull them out of MasterCard and go put them at a high-flying startup without a lot of guardrails and no operating procedures and manuals, it's not that they're bad people. It's just it's a bad fit. And so that realization that the fit is so important. Outside of I'm talking about talent here. Well, everybody knows you want talented people, but the fit is so important. I started to try to think about, particularly at earlier stage organizations, how do you ensure that? How do you maximize the likelihood for that? So we generated a test early on where we took our whole leadership team through and we had people test for values. What do you value? What are the most important traits? And the way that we did it, to make it extra hard, is we would take two values and we would jut them up against each other, and you'd have a 1 to 6 scale. So there was you couldn't pick the middle. You had to lean on one. So one might be, I like to work hard. I like to achieve goals. There, yeah, I do like to work. Oh, I like to achieve goals. Yes.
Yeah.
Or I have a low ego, or I care about people. Right. So we really made them difficult types of values to go do. And so when we went through and we looked at it, there were a set of core values that our leadership team espoused. In our case, in our organization, it was hard work, high achievement, proactiveness, low ego, high quality of work. Those were the big five that stood out. And then we looked 3 years out. We surveyed the whole team on this. And if you exhibited at least two of those values, there was about a 70% chance, 69, 70% chance you were still there 3 years later.
Okay.
If you espoused between less than two, I think one or less of those values, it was that number got cut in half. And then if you had the negatively correlated values, there was a 75% chance that you weren't in the organization. And so it's not that those are bad people or bad hires or this and that. It's like a lot of them, they don't share the underlying values, and therefore you've got a misfit.
Sounds like an alignment. It's alignment.
It's total alignment. And so what's interesting when you think about all the DEI initiatives that have been going on, which, by the way, I'm very supportive of. We need a more diverse workforce. We need a more diverse educational gaps being closed. I live in St. Louis. St. Louis has a big history of a lot of redlining and racial discrimination. But my take on it is I want a diverse set of backgrounds and experiences and viewpoints with some shared values, one homogeneity of values. Because if you don't value the same things I value, or the leadership team values, you're like statistically probably not going to be there for very long.
Yeah.
And so figuring out how do we tease out people in the interviewing process what their values are if you don't put everybody through one of these tests, and how do you continue to refine and communicate? Like I got to the point where I will try to screen out and help people self-select. Like, if this sounds like you, that doesn't sound like us. Or if this sounds like you, that sounds like it'd be a good fit. The worst thing we can do is hire somebody who's not going to be a good fit.
So skills are the table stakes.
Yes.
I need a developer. I need this. I need, whatever it is, skills are the table stakes. And you can read about those skills on a resume. Worked at IBM, worked at here, worked there, delivered this software, did this, did that. Okay, that's pretty cool. Well, let's do a technical assessment. We can do that. So technically savvy, has the chops. Values is an amazing assessment. Did you come up with this scale yourself, or did you use a framework?
We looked for a framework. We didn't find one at that time. Maybe there's a better one today. But we came up with it ourselves and tested it. Maybe I should have bought instead of built, but I didn't find. I tried to buy at that point. But the other thing I would say, I'll give you one more story on this. I used to work with a executive, whip smart, worked at some of the top companies in the SaaS space, and it wasn't working out. And I was like, it's not because of lack of talent. It's not because of lack of hard work. It's that for the role he was in, this was somebody who needed to be very multi-threaded, because we had multiple projects going on at once that needed to be managed. If I put this guy on one project, he would drill the center of the earth and do awesome on it. But for the role he was in, that was not possible. And so his desire to do really well conflicted with the needs of the role of being multi-threaded rather than single-threaded. And so it's not that there's a bad guy. Actually, he went to his next gig, did great there, was able to go like drill down in the center of the earth of one particular problem, and he's flourishing. And so just in retrospect, I was like, man, I wish I would have done a better job communicating that up front. That one of the keys to success for that particular role is that you're going to have to be a multi-threaded person. You got other roles where it's like, that's the opposite of what I want. You need to be single-threaded. You need to not get distracted. You need to be able to focus on one specific thing. So just figuring that stuff out has been important. I also have a set of interview questions I like to ask people to see how they think. I love to ask people if they won the lottery, what would they do with their life? And it helps me understand, kind of what some of their motivations are beyond the money. I love to ask people, when is the last time you burned a bridge? Tell me about that. Get some good, interesting answers on that. Another time is, when is the last time you burned a boat? You said, we're not going back. This boat is burned. We're not taking it back to Europe. So I try to get to some of those types of questions because, like you said, I have other people who can assess your technical feasibility and or which marketing frameworks or which depending on the role.
I had a guy I interviewed once on Wall Street, and it was when I was interviewing to work at Bear Stearns, and they said, "Oh yeah, show up here at 8:30 in the morning on this day." Blah, blah, blah. So throw on the A suit. Recruiter who was retained for the search says, "Yeah, it's going to be great. They're pumped up about you. This is awesome." I was there for about 13 hours. Okay, and the 13 hours included a dinner at the end of the night, which was unforeseen, but it went well. They liked me and they wanted to go out for drink and a dinner. But I made my way. I started with the guy I'd directly be reporting to. Made my way through the organization. Second or third, maybe the third guy I met with was a guy named I'll leave his name out, but it was a guy who was in charge of tech and ops, and it was Pete Cheresia. I'm gonna have Pete on here. So Pete said to me, he says, "Yeah, you're gonna meet a lot of people today, and I'm not gonna, I had to fill out a questionnaire coming in. It took me 10 hours to respond to it on a Saturday. How would you do this in detail? How would you do that? Tell me about the last time you deployed this. Tell me what you know about that, and just, it took me a long time and I crushed it. But he said, yeah, everybody's going to talk to you about what you know and how you manage. He goes, I make two assumptions coming in. You're in the meeting. You deserve to be here. We've got enough people lined up front to weed out the people we don't want to talk to. So, between my recruiter, my retained search, and the people that talked to you before me, he said, what am I going to do? I'm going to tell you don't deserve to be here. Your resume looks great. You've worked at a lot of great places. I'm just here to figure out if you're an asshole. That's what he said to me. I'm just here to figure out if you're an asshole. And I said to him, oh, okay. He said, but I don't know yet. And I laughed. I laughed. I thought it was really funny. And I think my laughing was probably the best response. But he said, you're going to go meet with everybody else. You're going to come back. And, so far, you're doing all right. But I'm going to find out. I'm going to see if everybody here thinks you're an asshole. That's what he said to me. It was fantastic. This guy was very successful, very capable. He was the last guy I met with again before drinks and dinner. And he had circled the horn, and I was 45 minutes to an hour with everybody, making my way through the fixed income division, tech, security, compliance, executive, the whole thing. And he said to me, well, we found out you're not an asshole because they're taking you drinks and dinner tonight. So that's usually like when I know you're going out after, he's not an asshole. He goes, so you made it to the dance. You deserve to be here. You're not an asshole. And he said, the second you walk out of this building, that recruiter that we hired is going to call you. He's going to have a sixth sense. He's got somebody standing outside the door waiting to see you come out so he can call you and ask you how it went. Because you getting hired means, he's going to get the back end of his retained search on this. He goes, and you just need to tell him that was within the best interest of the organization that we continued this dialogue. We'd like to have you on board. And so, much to your point, these questions, not as brash, but they figure out people where they're aligned. And I guess one of those guys, are you a really nice guy or are you an asshole? I'm like a 6 to the nice guy, or I'm a 4 to the nice guy, it's an interesting take. I saw recently a clip by Steve Jobs where he really marveled at getting talented people together. And you might have seen this, and if you haven't, I'll send it to you. But somebody asked him a question about, like, how do you put together the best people all the time? And he said, it's not easy. And I have failed so much in doing it. He said, but nothing gives me more pleasure than when I get it right and hire an A player and I drop them into the room with other A players. Boy, do they love working with one another. They just love working with one another. You have some more details. Like, I would have to say that A player probably aligned on that value curve pretty closely with the other people. So, I mean, his was a 30-second clip and you gave me, a good few minutes on the details of it. I think that's so important. Where do people want to go? What do they want to do? What do they want to accomplish? And you have my mind rolling here. My brain is moving. I can pick out 5 people right now across various organizations that I know who are absolutely not value aligned with other people in their organization, and they're not succeeding.
Great.
They're not, and I've never really been able to put my finger on it in that succinct way. He's different. I had other language, but that value alignment is a massive key.
I
It's
feel like it's
fantastic.
very understudied and underutilized by organizations. I mean, think about it like this. Let's take Apple and Microsoft as an example. Two both $1 trillion companies, very
Starkly
different,
different.
very different values. And it's not to say that Microsoft people are bad and Apple people are good, or Apple people are bad and Microsoft people are good. But an Apple person is going to have a hard time in a Microsoft culture.
Yeah.
And a Microsoft person is going to have a hard time in an Apple culture because they're different values and different things that they
Just different.
optimize for.
Yeah. Last topic. It's going to take us a little bit. All right. I want to get your take on the state of AI. You've been at it a long time, well before ChatGPT was released. You've been coding results and things for a decade and a half, right, or more. Give me the David Karandish, talk to me about the seeds of AI, where you think we are now, and then I'm going to segue into the sort of the possibilities of the future. So talk to me about, talk to me about the start and where it really sort of jumped out and how we got to here and what you think about what we're doing.
Yeah. So my first thought on this is that when you look at what's happened in the world of AI, we've gotten the biggest advancements where we've got great training data. And by great training data, I mean both the breadth and the depth of the data. So ironically, we have made more progress on getting cars to drive themselves while not fully productionized and still supervised than teaching an AI to fold laundry, put it in the washing machine, put it in the dryer, and fold it when it comes out.
Yeah.
It's not that teaching a physical bot to do our laundry is any harder than teaching a car to drive. In fact, it's much easier. It's that we haven't yet created a training data set where we have all 350 washing machines tagged, and we've got all the different clothing types to know that wool needs to do this and it shouldn't go in the dryer and these should go on. Cool. So it's not that that's a hard problem to solve. We just don't have the training data for it yet. And
Right.
so in fact, having cameras on cars, since they are passively collecting all of this training data, able to build a much faster data set. When I look at what's happened in the world of large language models, the internet has become a training set. If you scan the whole internet, you can figure out things about language, about the intent of language, about the intent of what people mean by what they say, because you have this very massive data set to go build from. So my first thought on the state of AI is you're going to continue to see asymmetric progress in various spheres, and what will drive that progress forward faster is a cleaner, better organized, collectible data set around the types of problems you're going to want to solve. I think that when you have passive data set creation, like cameras, like scraping websites, those things will happen faster. Where you need more active data set creation, it's going to go slower. Let me hold that aside from that.
Yeah.
I also think that if you think about what is AI in the simplest form, AI is software that learns and applies patterns. Like, it's the simplest definition. And I think it's I can tell my 7-year-old son when he asks, Dad, what does capacity do? What is an AI? Say, hey, it's software that learns and applies. But you got that worksheet that's like triangle, triangle, square, triangle, triangle, square, triangle, triangle. What comes next? Yeah. Our software is looking for patterns like that at many, many, many times over. What you're finding, though, is that there's almost like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs for what these types of data sets can bring you. So we started out with things like recommendation engines, or Netflix telling me that I'm probably gonna want to watch the old Planet of the Apes movie because the new Planet of the Apes movie is coming out.
Right.
And knows I like sci-fi. Now you have these large language models that are able to, you throw a query out like, I want to write a director of marketing job description, and it's going to take all 5,000 director of marketing job descriptions from Indeed and LinkedIn, all these different places. It's going to go amalgamate that together. So I think we're working our way up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're not at belonging yet. We're not even close to that. We're in the safety phase of what that looks like. I think what is coming over the horizon is not just language models coming back with a parroted response, but actual reasoning that goes into these decisions. If you think of intelligence as pattern recognition,
Yeah.
then a decision is making a choice based on a set of patterns that you recognized over some period of time in order to achieve some kind of goal with some kind of constraints. And so where I see this going generally is we're going to start moving toward these AI systems actually making decisions on our behalf that in some cases will be as good as we would have done, but way, way faster. And in some cases, are going to be a lot better than we would have done. I'll give you an example. We're talking with a company that does domain name consulting.
Yeah.
So if you've got, a pizza joint called, Vic'sPizzaPlace.biz, they'll come back and they'll say, hey, Vic, we can try to help you find Vic'sPizza.com. Would you like to own that? Yeah, that sounds much better. It'll probably help me with my marketing. But they had a team of humans that would go through all of these domains and try to manually come up with what's the next best domain based on the domain you have.
Right.
And we looked at it and we're like, let's go throw that at an AI model. Within a week, the AI model was matching the human suggestion within 80%. And then out of the other 20%, it was actually outperforming the humans a good 5 to 10% of the time.
Okay.
In a fraction of the time it takes to go do this. This is on millions of domains. And so I think what you're getting to is you're starting to get to the point where AI technology is becoming a decision-making entity, not just a parroting entity, where you're going to start to have this applied in every possible place that you can put software.
Guest a few episodes back was a guy named Dane Ehring. Dane, by education, has a PhD in astrophysics. He also went on to, he did some government work. Then he worked for Steve Jobs. And then he built a software company, ultimately sold that software company. but he's still an astrophysics geek. And so I asked him this question, and he said, yeah, there's a debate that's split right up the middle amongst astrophysicists. Will AI achieve consciousness? And he said it's right up the middle. Some believe they will, and some believe that they won't. So you said decisioning and reason, and I think reason is a formula of what happened in the past informs the now and the future. This is how humans work, right? Hey, I don't step out in traffic because cars are coming by. Danger, danger. Like that's a pattern that's been built in. I don't do it. But the true creative side, like the strokes of genius, Bob Dylan writing a song, Paul McCartney, writing a song. I mean, I just really wonder, what'll happen there. What Dane and I agreed on is that we were talking about records, and sort of what's old is new, right? We say consciousness will go back to vinyl. There'll be a time where AI will do a pretty damn good job of mimicking consciousness, but it'll be a mimic. It'll be a mimic. It won't be actual human consciousness. And we didn't know if it was 10, 20, 30, 50, or 100 years. We don't know. My bet it's going to be a lot shorter because the development cycles and things we're able to do are accelerated 1,000-fold. But we were trying to predict when, consciousness would go back to vinyl, so to speak. So does that give you anything to think about? I mean, what do you think about when you hear that?
I think a couple of thoughts. I think it's worth exploring. Could the technology become conscious without it having to be human-like conscious? Right. So, like, I have a dog, relatively intelligent dog. She knows that if I walk next to the little end table and I open that drawer, it's got the leash in there, and she's conscious enough to know that means it's time to go for a walk.
Yeah.
She's not, writing War and Peace. She's not programming a GPU. That there's a level of consciousness that my dog has. I think that we get really tripped up in when will the AI be conscious exactly like we are?
Yeah.
And the answer to that might be never. But if the question is when will it be conscious in its own form, I think that might happen a lot sooner.
Yeah, I like that thought, and I think it's right. I mean, I think, obviously there's a lot of fear of, machine taking over man and things happening, but I think there's going to be an enhancement of human capability here, beyond what anybody expected. Just think about how people, we got 125, 150 million ChatGPT users now or more, 100 in the first few months. It's in every professional that I know. It's in their daily tool belt. They're using it and doing something, if not getting something direct, referring, taking something they've written, getting another take on it, generating an image, it's in everybody's tool belt. I love the opportunity, and there's another example early on in Watson, and this was close to my heart. My mom was a patient at Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York City. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, very late stage. And, the way Sloan Kettering at that time, I'm not sure if it's still the case, the way they run their case review was the treatment protocols were not determined by a single doctor. There were groups, and they met on a weekly basis, and they agreed on treatment protocols because everybody brought in a different angle and a different perspective. So my mother's case was reviewed, her results were reviewed, and then the path was set based upon a consensus of I think a 20-person team. Early in the Watson days, IBM put up a challenge to Sloan Kettering. I'm not sure if you remember this story, but they said, hey, we want access to every journal, every paper, every study, everything you could possibly give us on patient information and treatment protocols for diagnoses of these types of cancers. And then you let us ingest that, chew on it, and we're going to do stuff. And then we're going to come back in a period of time and we're going to run side by side with you. And we're going to see what your treatment protocols are. And then we're going to run it against Watson and we're going to see what the treatment protocols come out of Watson are. I think it took something ridiculous like 2 to 3 weeks to go scrape and ingest and do all this stuff. And it started building their models and doing that. And then they put it to work. And they tried it with the first 20 cases. 19 of the cases were exact spot on treatment protocols. One wasn't. And then after further review, the panel decided that Watson had a better treatment protocol. And it was because it had more real-time access to a study that had come out of somewhere and had been recently published and had very strong evidence that this protocol was measured and it was against a bigger study, and it was like, okay, we have new information. But how do doctors read everything that comes out, consume, and determine? And so they went with the Watson protocol. Now, this was years ago. I'm talking Watson here, a really long time ago.
Right.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if you were that one person and that made a difference? That made a difference. So I think there's just amazing opportunity and amazing things that can happen out here with the use of AI. I see it enhancing people's work. It will make them more efficient. Yeah, we're going to automate a lot of stuff. And, you have that picture about automation, cognitive and generative AI. And I think that's spot on, but I think it's going to help human performance. And if, somebody said to me, oh, you sell AI, you're going to put everybody out of work. And I said, well, what did you say to the guy who started automation in Detroit? I mean, the world evolves and the world moves, and, I can't create this, but we're trying to move the universe in a way that's efficient. And I wish, that I certainly don't want anybody to be out of work or out of job. I want to try to enhance their job to make them more successful. And I think that's the opportunity we have here.
Well, just to play off of that, I think people view the workplace in terms of statics.
Yeah.
I have 4 kids at home. 2 or 3 of them might be in a job that doesn't exist yet.
Maybe
Right?
all 4 of them.
Maybe all 4 of them, if it continues going at the pace it's on. So, like, the best thing we could do for your kid is to help make sure they're not in the wrong job, and they can use this technology to help them do their best work, not the work that happens to be what we've come up with. I've never met a kid who's like, you know what, Dad, what I want to do when I grow up, I want to copy and paste screens from one screen to the next on a healthcare EMR. That's really what I want to do. I want to copy and paste all day long. Nobody says
it's a good
that,
living.
right?
No, nobody says that. Well, to give you some statistics, actually, I have 3 kids, and one of them are actually doing something. He's 26, and he's a social media content creator and producer and working in a pretty cool space. 26 years ago, that wasn't a job.
Right.
Nobody even thought that was going to be a job. And so
and
now
it's like, of course he's doing that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. It's a great 26-year-old,
of course. And now you have guys like Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary. There's another clip I'll send you where they said to him, hey, he said, if you would have asked me just 3 years ago what the number one skill to come out of college with, get an education degree, and I would have said engineer, engineer, engineer. I said, I'm not going to say that anymore. He said, right now, what's in high demand are people who can create. He said, if you're a photographer, if you're a videographer, if you can write copy, if you're an art director, if you have the ability to put these 14-second, 59-second clips, put videos together and manage content on social media to be able to sell products and engage people. He said, I'm paying kids out of college $150,000 a year. He goes, I thought they were starving artists. I could get them for free. He said, it's not the case anymore. And so it's funny. I sent that to my son because my son is new. He's 7 or 8 months in this career. He made a change out of the fitness industry. He's great at it. He's doing unbelievably well. He's got a big passion for it. But, he's he's in another lap here. He's figuring this piece out, but now he's in a place like, that a guy like Mr. Wonderful is putting, on top of engineers. Would you have ever thought that even 15 years ago, 10 years ago? Probably not 5. Pretty amazing stuff.
Very amazing.
Yeah. Hey, I want to go back, and I know we said our last topic, but I got a couple minutes here, and I want to touch base on something else. We talked about the future of AI, but I want to give you a minute here to just wrap up here with, tell the audience about capacity a little bit more, and maybe 1 or 2 use cases that you're solving for, and lay about a little bit of the roadmap of where you're going to head in the next, 12, 24, 36 months.
So, really high level, we're here to help automate your support. So that can mean deflecting the emails and tickets and phone calls that you have to deal with. Could mean helping your agents be more productive, cut down that handle time, or give them the tools that they need in order to handle the tickets and calls. And then the campaigns and workflows to go reach out to customers. So those are kind of the big 3 buckets we do: the self-service deflection, the agent assist, and the campaigns and workflows. We can work with local company up the street. So one of our clients, West Community Credit Union, they were getting barraged with all these calls, and they were also getting a lot of people asking questions on their website. It was taking people away from their branches. We rolled out our web concierge capacity bot. We were able to cut their calls going to their contact center by 20% in the same time frame when they grew their assets under management and their number of people, or number of members of the credit union, by 40%. So 40% bigger business, 20% fewer calls, and 10-point increase in their CSAT scores. And so these are the types of things that we can help with. Another example, we're working with Apple. If you call up the Apple Care phone line and you've got a question and you got a cracked iPhone screen, we can help you with that sort of thing. We've got clients who used us to do enhance their appointment schedules and reminders. So I want to make sure that people get to the job on time. I want to make sure that people get to this appointment on time. But this kind of technology is helpful for that. We just signed a client this week who wants to use our technology for loan recommendation engines. So we're trying to take what the underwriters have been spending weeks on doing. We're saying we're going to go shrink that down and have the AI help predict what is the best program that somebody will qualify for. So I would kind of say it this way: if you have a portion of your team that's dedicated to support, whether that's customer support, answering phone calls and emails and tickets, or whether that's internal support, doing onboarding and IT and password resets and all the things that trip people up, check us out. See if we can help. We do this stuff day in and day out.
I love it. So you can answer emails in an automated way. You can answer SMS. You have chat bots. You have voice bots? Two-way voice?
We do have voice bots.
Voice bots.
Two-way voice, right. Agent assist.
Agent assist, the whole 9 yards. Fantastic. David, just an amazing, amazing time tonight. Your perspective on things is not only refreshing, but a lot deeper than I knew about you. So I really enjoyed our chat tonight. Really appreciate you coming on.
Vic, thanks for having me here. Always a pleasure. Anytime I spend time with you, I always learn something.